Hi, and welcome to Reddit Confessions. She came home with a to-go bag and a story rehearsed in her head. I know that because she walked in laughing, alone, but still riding the high of the dinner she'd just shared with him. Elliot, her boss, the man whose name she swore meant nothing. She didn't even notice the silence at first, or the missing shoes by the door, or the dust outlines where picture frames once stood. She just kicked off her heels and shouted, "Vern, you up?" The bedroom light was off. The kitchen was empty. The suitcase that lived under our bed, gone. And when she opened the closet, one of the hangers was still swinging, like it hadn't accepted I was serious yet. I imagined the moment she realized what she was seeing. That my laptop wasn't on the desk. That my slippers weren't under the armchair. That I had not only left, I had removed myself. Erased myself. She was looking at the shell of a life we had built, and now it was full of holes she couldn't explain. I wonder if she noticed I left my wedding ring on top of her favorite candle. Vanilla bergamot. The one she lit when she wanted the house to feel romantic. I placed it right there, in the wax, still warm. Earlier that evening, while she was sitting across from him at a corner table with dim lighting and maybe a second glass of wine, I was quietly boxing up my past. I worked in silence, methodically, like a man sneaking out of his own story. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I just moved. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a scene. It was surgical. Because this wasn't the first dinner. It was just the first one she didn't bother hiding. She wore the red blouse I complimented last Christmas. She curled her hair the way she used to on our anniversary. And when she got into that car, the black one that always waited 2 blocks down so the neighbors wouldn't talk, I stood by the window and didn't wave goodbye. I didn't need to hear what she'd say afterward. I already knew. He's just my boss. It was a business dinner. You're overthinking everything again. She's good at that, bending truth until it looks reasonable, folding betrayal into politeness. But even the best lies start to wear thin when you hold them up to the light. And I had been living in the dark long enough. So, while she was ordering creme brulee, I was deleting joint bank accounts. While she was laughing at some story he probably tells all the women he mentors, I was erasing my name from the lease. While she leaned forward, smiling at a man who wasn't her husband, I was walking out the back door with the last box of my dignity. No note. No text. Nothing to chase. She wasn't supposed to come home that early. I figured I had until midnight. But she walked in just after 10:30, which means she probably didn't stay for dessert. Maybe he had somewhere else to be. Or maybe she finally said no. But it was too late. The house wasn't home anymore. I wasn't waiting in the living room. And the man she left behind, he's not here anymore. She probably thought I'd left in a fit of rage, slammed the door, maybe shouted something dramatic, took off into the night like a wounded animal. But no, I was calm. That's the part that would eat at her later. I was calm. I had time. I'd been planning it since the Monday she left her purse hanging open on the kitchen chair and forgot I was still in the room. She was in the shower. I wasn't snooping. At least, not at first. But the receipt was sticking out like a flag. White, crumpled, and screaming to be read. Dinner for 2. Appetizers. A bottle of wine. And 2 entrees from a restaurant we'd never once gone to together. Way out in Norwalk, near the harbor. Camelot, private, expensive. The timestamp, 9:41 p.m. Last Thursday. She'd told me she was at a networking seminar with the team. But she didn't order salmon and truffle potatoes with the team. She didn't share creme brulee with her HR rep. I sat down at the table, receipt in hand, and stared at it like it might rewrite itself. But it didn't. It just stayed there, proof printed in ink. My hands were shaking, but I didn't cry. Not then. It was worse than crying. It was stillness. When she came downstairs, towel on her head, casual like nothing had shattered, I held the receipt in my palm. I thought about saying something. Thought about confronting her, demanding an explanation, hearing her stammer out some excuse about client bonding or the team wanted to try seafood. But I didn't. I folded it once, slid it into my pocket, and I smiled. That smile must have scared me more than anything, because it felt dead. The next morning, she kissed my cheek, said she'd be working from the office most of the day, wore her gray dress, the one she always called her meeting armor. I asked her if she'd be back late. She said probably not, but to eat without her just in case. I watched her leave like I was watching a rerun of a show I already knew the ending to. She didn't even turn around before getting into her car. And just like that, she was gone. That's when I opened the storage closet. pulled out the empty moving boxes, and started folding up our life. I didn't take the big things first. I started with the stupid, sentimental ones. The birthday cards. The ceramic mug she painted with Vern plus Nora equals forever. The concert ticket from that awful indie band she dragged me to on our third date. Each piece felt like a brick in my gut, but I kept going. I even packed the holiday ornaments, the photos, the little woven blanket we bought in Asheville that summer we almost broke up, and then didn't. By 2 p.m., the house felt lighter, not just emptier, like it was shedding its skin, like it knew. At 3:17 p.m., I got the notification from our bank. She'd used the joint credit card. Again, lunch in the city, just for her. Steak, sparkling water, and a side companion meal, whatever that means. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. I stood in our bedroom doorway and just watched the light shift across the carpet. It felt like time had slowed down, like the house was holding its breath, waiting for me to make the final decision. And I did. I called my cousin Byron, lives 2 hours north, runs a little auto shop. Always said I could crash there if I ever needed a reset. He didn't even ask why, just said, "I'll leave the porch light on." Before I hung up, I heard his wife whisper in the background, "Is it about her?" And Byron just said, "Yeah." I didn't know what hurt more, that they knew, or that they weren't surprised. So I finished packing before sunset, vacuumed, took out the trash, cleaned the bathroom mirror. I didn't want her to think I left in chaos. I wanted her to see the space I left behind and feel it. I erased myself like a ghost who'd been haunting the place too long. And then I sat in the driveway, waiting, not for her. For the moment it would feel real. For the second my heart would finally admit what my brain had known for weeks. She didn't love me anymore. But when I saw her headlights in the distance, I didn't start the engine. I waited. I wanted her to step inside first. To see it. To feel what it's like when someone's presence becomes a void. To walk into a house that was once full of love and realize that love has packed its bags and left. And now, she'd be stepping over the threshold with the sound of laughter still clinging to her lips, completely unaware that she was walking into silence. The front door creaked open just after 10. I had parked my car 3 blocks away and walked back, just to watch. I know, it sounds pathetic, but I needed to see her face when she stepped into the stillness. I needed to watch her pretend everything was fine, until it wasn't. She didn't turn on the lights right away. Probably expected to find me in the kitchen or upstairs with a book. It took her maybe 5 seconds before she called out my name. Not loud, casual, as if I was just in the bathroom or had dozed off on the couch again like I always did when I waited up for her. The second time she said it, louder this time, her tone cracked. That's when I saw the light flick on. Then another. She moved through the house quickly, her voice following like a lost signal bouncing between empty walls. I could almost feel the panic hit her when she opened the bedroom closet and saw half of it gone. The missing shirts, the bare hanger, the toothbrush no longer beside hers. That's when the call started. I watched her number flash across my screen. 16 times in under an hour. I didn't pick up. I didn't block her either. I wanted her to sit with it. The unanswered ringing. The slow dread settling in her gut. At 11:02 p.m., she left a voicemail. Her voice was trembling, but she was still trying to sound in control. "Vernon, hey, where are you? Are you okay? This isn't funny. Just call me, okay? Not I'm sorry. Not come home. Just a command." Wrapped in panic she hadn't earned the right to feel. By midnight, her tone had changed. The next voicemail was less composed. She stammered, then snapped. "If you're trying to punish me, this isn't the way to do it. We need to talk. You can't just disappear." But that's the thing. I hadn't disappeared. I had finally appeared to myself again. I was no longer the quiet, apologetic man waiting for scraps of affection while she gave her laughter, her time, her sparkle to someone else. I was finally taking up space by not being there. I spent the night in Byron's guest room. I didn't sleep much. Just stared at the ceiling fan spinning slowly, the blade slicing up silence like it could rearrange the memories that kept replaying in my head. The night I bought her that anniversary necklace she never wore. The way she stopped reaching for my hand in public. The time she lied about going to her sister's, but I saw the Uber drop her off 2 blocks from Elliot's condo. I wanted to believe it was all innocent. That I was imagining things. That I was just insecure. But it wasn't me. It was her. And now she was walking through her house alone, finally feeling the consequences of years of tiny betrayals stacked like bricks between us. At 1:34 a.m., she sent a text. Just one word. Please. It sat on my screen like a ghost. I stared at it for so long that my phone dimmed and faded to black. I didn't reply, because I knew what was coming next, the part where guilt turns to desperation, and desperation turns to rewriting the truth. She tried to spin it, twist it into something else, make it about how I abandoned her, about how I never gave her a chance to explain. But I don't need her explanations anymore. I already knew what she'd done. And more importantly, I knew what I was about to do next. I wasn't going to just vanish. No, she had made this public, flaunted her smiles, her excuses, her closeness with Elliot at company functions and social dinners where mutual friends had whispered behind my back, but never had the guts to tell me. She thought I'd be too soft to fight back. She forgot something important. The quiet ones. We take notes. We remember. We build our exits like fortresses, slowly, silently, until one day, there's nothing left but the echo of our absence and the weight of what they threw away. And I had something planned, something she wouldn't see coming. Not loud, not violent, but unforgettable. And it would begin in the morning. I didn't sleep that night, not even a minute. I just laid there in Byron's guest room, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like motor oil and cedar wood, replaying every moment over the past 6 months. Every detail I gaslit myself into believing was harmless. And as the sky outside turned from black to a pale, indifferent gray, something inside me hardened. It wasn't anger. It was something colder, something settled. By 7:15 a.m., my phone buzzed again. Not Nora. Not this time. It was a number I didn't recognize, but the message was short, almost smug. She's been crying all night. Hope you're proud. No name. No context. But I knew. I knew. Elliot. My first reaction was disbelief. He had the audacity to contact me? To guilt-trip me? This man who had been circling my wife like a shark in a tailored suit, who had shared dinners, laughs, and God knows what else with the woman who once promised me forever. He thought I was the villain for walking away? I didn't respond. I just stared at that message, my pulse suddenly loud in my ears. Because it confirmed something I hadn't been completely sure of until now. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't just dinners. It wasn't innocent. Elliot knew. He knew what Nora was doing. And more than that, he felt entitled to weigh in. Like I was some obstacle they'd finally pushed out of the way. I sat up, legs dangling off the side of the bed, phone still in hand, and I let the silence wrap around me like armor. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was collaboration. She didn't just lie. She let someone else step into our life. She made space for him. In her calendar, in her car, in her thoughts. And now he thought he had the right to text me like we were players in the same game. Well, I wasn't playing anymore. That's when I made the second part of my plan. The first had been escape. The second, exposure. But not the kind that would end up on some revenge site or make headlines. No, I wanted the truth to unfold slowly, painfully, elegantly. She worked for a firm that valued reputation like it was currency. Appearances mattered. Clean records. No drama. Elliot, especially, was one of those polished types who gave TEDx talks and moderated diversity panels while probably scheduling his affairs between board meetings. So I began gathering. Quietly, I logged into the old desktop I'd brought with me, the one she thought I stopped using years ago. But I had kept things. Screenshots, calendar overlaps, hotel confirmations from the credit card history she forgot I could still access, email subject lines left open on our shared tablet. One particularly damning dinner invite she RSVP'd to while sitting in bed next to me, claiming she was answering a client inquiry. She had built a house of cards, and I had the breeze. I didn't want to destroy her. I wanted to mirror her. Let her see her own face in the wreckage. Let her watch as her careful life began to shift under the weight of her own lies. But I wasn't there yet. First, I needed to hit her where she lived, uncertainty. So I sent her a single message. The only one since I'd left. Checked the hallway drawer. Then I powered off the phone, drove into town, bought myself the first hot coffee I'd had in days, and waited. I imagined the exact moment she read it. The hallway drawer was where we kept spare keys, receipts, some old batteries. But last night, I'd left her a flash drive. It was labeled with the date of our wedding. Nothing else. And on it, just 4 files. One photo of her and Elliot sitting far too close at that rooftop bar downtown, timestamped during one of her strategy workshops. A forwarded email chain between her and her assistant discussing covering for her Friday night. A PDF of the restaurant bill she had claimed was a group event. And finally, a blank Word document, titled simply, "You knew." No context, no explanation, just enough to shatter her denial. By noon, I had 6 new voicemails. The last one was nearly a scream. "Vernon, you're blowing this out of proportion. Why are you doing this? Why didn't you just talk to me? I didn't want to hurt you." That part stung, not because she was crying, but because she still made herself the victim. I had begged for her attention. I had tried to be enough. I gave her every out, every opportunity to tell the truth. And now, the truth had a timestamp, a location, a voice, and it wasn't hers anymore. I had taken back the story, and soon, I'd make sure the right people knew exactly what kind of mentorship Elliot was offering at his firm. Because when your world is built on deception, even a whisper of truth can make it collapse. By the end of that week, silence had become its own kind of music. I stopped checking the phone every 5 minutes. I stopped expecting an apology wrapped in clarity. I even stopped staring at the wedding ring I'd shoved into the bottom of my duffel bag. For a while, it felt like I was finally gaining some ground. A little peace. A little space from her voice echoing in my head like some relentless plea for sympathy. But then Friday came, and she showed up. I was in Byron's garage, sanding down an old maple chair one of his clients dropped off in a panic because the legs keep wobbling like my marriage. The irony wasn't lost on me. My hands were covered in dust and wood shavings, my mind floating somewhere between exhaustion and clarity. I heard footsteps on the gravel. Light. Hesitant. Not Byron's. Not his wife's. I didn't need to look up. I knew. Nora. She stood there, wearing the navy coat I bought her last Christmas. The one she'd told me made her feel too adult. Her hair was tied back in that fake casual way she always did when she wanted to look like she wasn't trying. But it wasn't the coat or the hair that froze me in place. It was the bruise. Right beneath her left eye. Faint but undeniable. Purple. Swollen. Real. She didn't say hello. Didn't ask if I had a minute. Just said, "Can we talk?" I didn't move. I didn't speak. I let her stand there in the cold. After all, she'd spent months pretending I didn't exist, ignoring the erosion of our marriage one polite lie at a time. Now it was her turn to feel like a ghost. She tried again. "Vernon, please." I finally set the sander down, looked her right in the eye and said, "You have 5 minutes." She blinked, swallowed, then stepped closer, her voice cracking like old floorboards. "I don't know what you think you know, but it's not what you think." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was pathetic. "You're going to open with that? After everything?" She flinched. I made a mistake. I raised an eyebrow. Just one. She looked away, then slowly reached into her coat pocket and pulled out her phone. "I want to show you something." She opened the photo gallery and tapped through a series of images I never wanted to see. Her and Elliot at dinner, leaning close. Him brushing hair behind her ear. Her smiling like I hadn't seen in years. And then silence. The next photo wasn't of them. It was a picture of her living room, ransacked. Broken lamp, overturned coffee table, and one shattered wine glass on the floor. I looked up. "What is this?" She hesitated. I told him I was done, that I was going to find you, that I needed to make things right. She took a breath. He didn't take it well. For a moment, I didn't know what to feel. Was it real? Was she finally telling the truth? Or was this just another performance? A sympathy card she could play to soften me? I told him, she continued, that I couldn't do this anymore. That you were the only person who ever saw me. Really saw me. Her voice was breaking now. He grabbed my phone. He pushed me. "It wasn't like that before, Vern. I swear. But last night, it was like something snapped." I stepped back, hands instinctively balling into fists. Not at her, at the image of that man in a blazer putting his hands on the woman who used to be mine. Whatever she had done, no one deserved that. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, not ready to let her rewrite the story. She looked me dead in the eyes. "Because I don't know where else to go. And because you're the only person who'll believe that I didn't mean for it to go this far." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My chest was tight. Not with love. Not even with grief. Just confusion. Rage. A small sliver of pity fighting to be heard. And something else, fear. Not of Elliot. Not even of what she'd done. I was afraid of what I might still feel for her. Even after all this. She reached out to touch my hand. I flinched. Don't, I whispered. Not yet. I thought you should know what he really is. I nodded slowly. I already knew. I just didn't know what you were. She didn't cry. I'll give her that. She stood there, taking it, like someone who finally understood that apologies are currency, and she was in debt. Where are you staying? I asked. She shook her head. Nowhere yet. I turned, walked into the house, grabbed the spare blanket from the hallway closet, and handed it to her without a word. You're not staying here, but I'll take you to a hotel. After that, you're on your own. She nodded. The drive was silent. She clutched the blanket like a shield. I dropped her off without looking back. And as I watched her disappear into the cold motel lobby, I realized something terrifying. Part of me still wanted to protect her, but another part wanted to see Elliot fall. Hard. Publicly. Permanently. And I was about to make that happen. 3 days passed. Nora stayed silent, which surprised me. I'd expected more calls, another string of texts trying to justify the unjustifiable, or some clumsy attempt at rekindling the flame she spent the last year extinguishing. But instead, nothing. She stayed in that cheap motel on the edge of town, ordered takeout, and didn't try to see me. Maybe she'd finally realized I wasn't hers to manipulate anymore. Or maybe she was just too afraid of what I was about to do. Because by that point, I wasn't just collecting receipts. I wasn't just licking wounds. I was moving pieces. It began with a manila envelope. No return address. Just a single typed label with Elliot's name and the logo of the firm he worked for. Inside were 36 pages. Photos, email printouts, receipts, screenshots from Nora's cloud backup that she forgot I still had access to. I made sure the evidence wasn't salacious. Nothing that would get flagged or dismissed. But it was damning. A timeline. A web. All neat, clean, and impossible to deny. It landed on Elliot's desk Wednesday morning. By 10:13 a.m., I got a text from a former colleague of Nora's I hadn't spoken to in months. Tabitha, someone I only vaguely remembered from a holiday party years ago. Vernon, is it true what's going around the office? I didn't respond. She followed up. People are saying Elliot's under review. There's a board meeting this afternoon. Something big. Nobody will say exactly what. I sat at the edge of Byron's driveway, phone in one hand, coffee in the other, and stared out at the street. I should have felt something. Relief. Triumph. A righteous surge of satisfaction. But what I felt instead was a strange hollowness, like watching the credits of a movie I never meant to star in. The man who disappears. The wife who regrets. The villain in a tailored suit now sweating through depositions. Still, I wasn't done. Later that night, I received another message from a private number. What the hell did you do? Elliot. I could feel the arrogance bleeding through those 5 words. He still thought he had control, that I was just some fragile husband who'd finally snapped. But I hadn't snapped. I'd sharpened, and I'd waited. I didn't respond. Instead, I made a quiet call to a reporter I'd met 2 years ago at a local charity auction. She wrote for a small financial publication that specialized in corporate ethics. I didn't say much, just dropped a tip and pointed her to the right LinkedIn connections. She would connect the dots on her own. People like Elliot always left a trail. By Thursday, the fallout began. One of the junior partners at the firm was placed on administrative leave. Internal review escalated. Nora called twice. I didn't answer. Byron's wife, Denise, pulled me aside and asked gently if I was okay. I wasn't. Not really. But I had work to finish. That night, I drove to the motel. Not to see her. Not to comfort. Just to deliver one last envelope. Hand-delivered this time. She opened the door slowly, eyes heavy, face bare. No makeup. No performance. Just a woman who'd been unraveling for days. She looked at me like I was a stranger who knew too much. What is this? I didn't go inside. Just handed her the envelope and said, the truth. For when you're ready to stop lying to yourself. Inside were copies of everything I'd sent to the firm, with her name blacked out. I wanted her to know what I had on her, and what I didn't use. Not because I was protecting her, but because I wanted her to sit with the realization that the man she betrayed had more mercy than the one she ran to. She opened her mouth to speak, but I was already walking away. Halfway to my car, she called out, you could have ruined me too. I paused, turned slowly, and said, you did that on your own. She didn't follow me. She didn't cry. She just stood there in that pale yellow motel light, holding the evidence like it was an obituary for the life she thought she'd always control. And as I drove off, I finally felt something real. Not joy, not even revenge, just clarity. I was no longer the man she walked over. I was the one who walked away, with everything she thought I'd never have again. Power, peace, and the upper hand. The gallery opening was never part of some grand revenge strategy. In fact, it had nothing to do with Nora or Elliot at all, not at first. Byron's cousin, a quiet guy named Jules with a reputation for painting desolate places and people who looked like they'd seen war, had invited me weeks earlier. Said I needed to get out, breathe some different air, see something that didn't remind me of her perfume or the way she laughed at things I didn't understand. So I went, reluctantly, expecting nothing more than an awkward wine and cheese setup and a few forced smiles from strangers. But instead, I found something else. Or maybe, I found me. One of Jules' newer paintings, a storm of blurred yellows and bruised reds, stopped me cold. It wasn't beautiful in the traditional sense. It was chaos captured mid-motion. A man dissolving into the background while a woman in a red dress looked away. I stared at it for almost 15 minutes, unsure why my hands were trembling. And then I heard her voice. Familiar, hesitant, trying too hard to sound casual. I didn't expect to see you here. I turned. Nora was standing just inside the gallery doors, her coat still damp from the freezing rain outside, eyes scanning the room like she'd walked into a dream that was turning hostile. For a second, I thought she might leave. But she didn't. She stepped closer, slow like she wasn't sure if I'd vanish. You cut your hair. I said nothing. She tried again. I saw the article. Of course she did. It had gone live 2 days ago. Not front-page news, but enough to make noise in the corporate ethics circuit. Senior executive under investigation following anonymous whistleblower evidence. Names redacted, but those in the know didn't need names. Elliot had taken an emergency leave of absence. The board had issued a formal statement about internal restructuring and reaffirming company values. He was radioactive now. Clients were distancing. And Nora? Well, she was nowhere in the statements. She stood beside me now, looking up at the same painting I'd been studying. Is this why you came? She asked. To watch me squirm. I looked at her, really looked. The bruise had faded, replaced by a brittle kind of exhaustion in her posture. She wasn't wearing makeup. Her hair was tied back, uneven. No performance. No mask. Just her. I didn't come for you, I said. I came for me. She winced. Not dramatically, just a tiny twitch of her lip, like the truth had teeth. I've been going to therapy, she blurted out, like it was a confession. 3 times a week. Group sessions too. I nodded once, not to affirm, but to acknowledge. I didn't know her applause. I know I don't get to ask for anything, she continued, her voice thinner now. But I just wanted you to know I'm not hiding anymore. Except behind every excuse you built for the last year, I said quietly. Behind every business dinner. Every empty promise. Every time you told me I was imagining it. Her eyes filled, but no tears fell. I never stopped loving you, Vern. And for the first time since all of this began, I didn't flinch. I didn't ache. I didn't feel like I'd been thrown into a blender of confusion and longing. Instead, I smiled. Not cruelly, not bitterly. Just gently. Maybe that's the problem. She opened her mouth, but I stopped her. Do you remember that time in Vermont? When the power went out, and we played cards by candlelight until sunrise. She blinked, caught off guard. Yeah, of course. You said that night was the most peaceful you'd felt in years. I turned back to the painting. And I believed you. She swallowed. It was... No, I said, still watching the chaos on the canvas. It was just the last night you could lie to me without guilt. Silence stretched between us. Around us, people murmured and moved, glasses clinked, laughter rippled. But we stood there like 2 fossils preserved in the moment our world cracked. I'm not asking for you to come back, she whispered. I wouldn't, I replied. But I want you to know I'm sorry. I know you are, I said. But that's not a door you get to walk through anymore. She nodded slowly, like she'd been waiting for that sentence. So this is it. I finally turned to her. This is the part where you go your way. And I finally get to live mine. And I left her there, standing in front of a painting of a man fading into nothing, in a room full of people who didn't know what she'd done or how much she had broken in the process. But I did. And now she knew that I'd built a life without her in it. One step, one truth, one breath at a time. A week after the gallery, I stopped dreaming about her. That's how I knew it was really over. No more restless sleep wondering what she was doing, who she was with, or if she ever truly missed me. No more looping the same memories like a broken film reel, trying to find the moment everything cracked. The silence was no longer heavy. It was finally peaceful. I rented a small cabin upstate, nothing fancy. Just a quiet place tucked into the woods, where the mornings smell like pine and the nights echo with owls instead of voicemail notifications. There's no TV, barely any internet. And it's perfect. I fix chairs for a local antique shop 3 days a week, write in a journal I never thought I'd keep, and make coffee every morning without rushing. That's the thing about heartbreak. When it's finally gone, you realize how much noise it made even in your quietest moments. I never heard from Elliot again. Last I read, he'd stepped down voluntarily from the firm. Nora sent one last message, just a few words. "Thank you for not destroying me. I'll carry it all with me." I never wrote back, and not out of malice, but because there was nothing left to say. Let her carry it. Let her learn. I wasn't the same man she walked away from, and I never will be again. Yesterday, I stood on a cliffside trail and watched the sun set over a lake so still it looked like glass. And I realized something I hadn't dared admit until now. She didn't break me. She set me free. I had been small in that marriage, shrinking to keep her comfortable, doubting myself to make her feel trusted, bending until my own reflection disappeared. But now I take up space. In my life. In my choices. In the mirror. If you're watching this and you've ever felt invisible in your own story, I hope this reminds you that walking away isn't giving up. Sometimes, it's the only way to begin again. Thank you for listening. That's the end of this story, here on Reddit Confessions. Have you ever made a quiet decision that changed your life forever? Share your experience in the comments. We'd love to hear your turning point. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and come back for more powerful true life confessions every week.